Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Fan Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Uh-huh. So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
If you're a fan of comic books and comic book conventions, Daytona Beach Comic Con needs to be on your list of must-attend events. It's a show that actually focuses on comic books. Imagine that! This year's event is happening on Saturday, September the 6th, and Sunday, September the 7th. Silverline creators will be there, so we'll see you at the show. There's a new convention in town, and it's sure to be mega fun without the mega expense. Comics, toys, collectibles, pop culture. ShadowCon, Saturday, February 1st, 2025 in Orlando, Florida. Silverline creators will be there, so we'll see you at the show. If you find yourself in the Orlando area, and let's be honest, doesn't everyone come to Orlando for the House of Mouse? Head over to Coliseum of Comics to get your comic book fix. Be sure to check out their location on East Colonial Drive, where they carry a wide selection of independent comics, including Silverline books. Stop by and don't forget to tell them Silverline sent you. Hey, if you're an independent comic creator looking to get your comic printed, look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our comics and do a fantastic job. They can even print special edition covers. When you reach out to them, be sure to tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kilber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday nights as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Hello, Internet, and welcome back to That Silverline Show on Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim TK, joined as always by Jose Fuentes.
Hello, everybody.
Ron Fortier.
Evening, folks.
And returning guest, Angelo. Your last name just threw me for a loop.
No worries. Hello, everyone. It's me, Angelo Concepcion.
Concepcion, that's right. Yes.
There you go.
Well, thank you again for joining us. And, of course, Angelo is the penciler for the subject of today's housekeeping, and that is Cat and Mouse Vipers, #1. And also joined, as always, by David Rios.
Hello.
Hey, Dave. All right, so we do have a trailer for Cat and Mouse, so we'll let that run real quick, and then we'll pop the Thunder page and let Angelo take it away.
Yeah.
Cat and Mouse Vipers. Giant child-snatching vipers are terrorizing New Orleans, pulling children from their homes in the middle of the night. In their eagerness to take on human trafficking in the city, Cat and Mouse find themselves in the thick of it. Crime, action, drama, with a smattering of superheroics. Now, like Roland Mann said, our head honcho here at Silverline, go do some backing, and we appreciate your support.
There you go. That's Cat and Mouse Vipers #1. We've already hit the first funding goal, and that is with 18 days left to go. So, like I said, this is the return of Cat and Mouse in the second volume. And Angelo, as the penciler, why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, this book was super fun to work on. I was on with Roland on one of the other shows earlier tonight, and yeah, I kept saying this book's super fun. And Roland said it really well in that as well, where you don't really have to have had to read the previous 4 issues of Cat and Mouse. You could really just jump into this one, and it's a great introductory. It gives you everything you need to know in that very kind of fun, I guess he described it as like an 80s, 90s kind of Marvel vibe. And yeah, it was a lot of fun, really cool new villains, and reintroducing you to the world of Cat and Mouse.
Absolutely. And I believe all the we still have one original art cover left if you want to get the inks by Tommy. That's still available for those of you who are looking to get some original art.
It's been updated, Tim. There's some the cover that Angela did, as well as a few pages.
Oh, okay. We do some more interior art. I see. Got added to the bottom.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, now you get that cover A artwork.
Yes.
That's right. Absolutely. And that's the cover. That's also the foil cover.
Yes.
And I'm sure if you hunt Angelo down at a convention or perhaps a local bodega, he might sign it for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Very cool. Okay, so we have a lot of original art still available for those of you who enjoy collecting that. We do, of course, have ability to order any additional back issue, perhaps Wolf Hunter, if you're so inclined. A book that may be shipping to you shortly if you completed your surveys.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, thank you, Angelo.
Yeah.
Well, today's topic is going to be one that is perhaps near and dear to all of our artists' heart. Also, Ron and I do have some strong opinions as well, and that is how many panels does a page need? And, of course, this is a very important topic as comics are a visual medium, and a lot of the pacing is handled in the visuals and how many panels a person needs to ingest before flipping the page. And Rory talked about how sometimes less on the page will cause them to linger, with a silent panel or a splash page will cause them to actually take more time on that, whereas more panels will cause a reader to speed through it because there's going to be more text to get through. And there's not, of course, not going to be any one-size-fits-all answer for any page or any story, but perhaps there are some guidelines or best practices that writers and artists can work on together to make sure that they are telling a well-paced and story that allows for the artist's art to come to life.
Yeah.
There you go.
Probably a good idea, Tim.
Yes.
Okay, to give a little historical background to this whole concept of panels and telling pictures in panels, right? Picture storytelling, all right? The whole idea of comic books. I posted up a page earlier for all you guys, and Tim, you may have it. And it's not quite, golden age 1940s, but it's from a 1950s Tom Mix Western. And, being the old guy I am, there it is, all right? One of the things you pick up off of this thing right off the bat is the fact that I think in the first days of the comic book industry, and again, going back to the late 30s and throughout the 40s, there was this basic mentality of let's just get the story out there. Let's just get it drawn and written and, just put it out there. Okay. I mean, this is going to kids. That was the target audience. So you can just, by even looking at this page, understand there wasn't a great deal of thought given to aesthetics or even the concept of how good a story this is or whatever. I mean, basically what you've got here is what I think was typical of Golden Age comics, which was just block panels. Regardless, this page has 8. I think most of them had the traditional 6 panel, which was like the, 6 equal squares in 3 tiers. So you had panel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And in this particular book, when I went through it, the average panel count was maybe 6 or 7.
Mm-hmm.
But again, notice the art is small because you've got way too much wordage. The word balloons are taking up way too much space in what should be a simple, easy comic lesson. If you blew it up and you actually read this story, it didn't need all that wordage. It didn't need all that space for word balloons.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this happens because none of that was given any serious thought to. It's not until we get out of the 50s themselves, all right, and away from the fact that comics are simply for children. Okay, we get to the 60s, and along comes Stan Lee and the Marvel Revolution, and suddenly there's this emphasis now on, well, you know what? Let's, comics are legitimate storytelling media. It's pretty much literature. Let's get it out there. Let's elevate our readership. Well, the minute you start elevating your readership to older kids, high school kids now into college, all right, they're going to be a little bit more demanding. They're going to want more than just a simplistic bunch of panels, small little pictures, okay? They want to see good artwork. They want to see excellent artwork. They want to see visuals, all right, that play across. They want some extra thought given to composition, given to, how you lay out a page. And moving away from that, I think we get into what our topic is tonight, guys, which is, okay, so now 2025, with like 85 years of, the comic media behind us, where has that taken us? And is there an ideal setup for how many panels a page should have? And you're going to have as many different opinions of that as you have writers and artists, all right? Now, yours truly, having been doing this for well over 50 years, I have, from early on realized that it being a visual media, I wanted to play off to the artist and the visual storytelling. And I subconsciously made a commitment to myself in my career that I would stick to a pretty much standard 6-5 panel formula in anything I wrote. So you either went from 5 panels one page, 6 panels the next. Okay, and there you go. This is me writing today. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 panels. And Andrea Marina's art. It sings. It tells the story. And that's what I understand visually. All right. Yep. It's not something every writer in the world can do. I've learned over the years that a lot of writers who write prose, short stories, and novels can't do comics. They don't grasp the concept of letting the art tell the story. So that's my 2 cents. But as I had said last week about the subject, I have very rarely ever gone beyond 6 panels, because once you get to 7, you are shrinking the art. You can't get away. That's physics. Okay, you're shrinking the artwork, and the more you shrink it, I mean, Jose brought it up last week. At the end of last week, we were talking. Different people like Frank Miller, who've given us the postage stamp pages, right, of the talking little heads and the television, screens on Batman Returns, which are 45 panels on a page. Come on, okay? It's cute. It's a gimmick, but is it good comics? No way. No bloody way.
I've similarly hit a point where I find that I have a wider range, and I'll do it based on the type of storytelling. And I find that something like with Wolf Hunter, where it is a more of a slower burn mystery, right? There's some visual action that happens, but it's more about the mental action. I'll load on a few more panels, because nothing is more boring than a page that is 4 panels of people just looking back and forth at each other while they monologue. So I want to give myself some impetus to have movement happening, or to have panels interact with each other. But like Ron said, if we get above 6 or 7 panels, my opinion then is that the panels need to be part of the artwork, right? The layout has to be doing something that is visually interesting in and of itself. It can't just be letterboxes. But if I'm doing something that's more action-oriented or more like epic in scale, like something that we have announced, perhaps unofficially last week with splash pages and is now has some official artwork for it. Soul Ascendant. I love a good 3-page panel for something like this, or a 3-panel page.
Give me a 3-panel page.
Yeah. 3-page panel.
Exactly, we're doing a fold out. Yeah.
Yeah, going really 90s with it, full horizontal.
Exactly. Yeah. It's actually a poster.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the whole I'm going to die on is bring back the mid comic like fold out poster.
Yeah. I think a really good thing here, though, fellas, is throughout this entire discussion, a big thing is clarity. However many panels you have, you don't want to really shrink things down too much, like you were saying, Ron, where it starts becoming unclear what the action is or what the real focus of the story is. You want it to still feel dramatic and punchy. So having 6 panels is solid. That's tried and true. But I have some pages I've been working on recently that, just because of how much martial arts action it is, it's become a lot of like quick 3-panel segments, but there's like up to 9 panels on the page, trying to really fit in what this writer wants for the script.
Yeah,
and
right.
It's,
yeah. Okay.
It's what the writer's bringing to the table, but making it work's been pretty fun. So I think there's some leeway as long as you can make it clear and still punchy, make it flow.
Right. Well, in that case, and I agree with you to that point where, again, the concept of working as a team between writer and artist. I try to stick to the 5-6. All right, as a writer, because I'm not an artist, and in writing scripts, I don't ever set up a page. I set up the panels. This is what happens in this panel. All right. And leave that whole concept of the composition, where those panels are going to go, to the artist. Now, again, I've mentioned this in the past. If I write a 6-page panel that I think tells the story what I want on that page, the information and the narrative it has, and I send it off to my partner, the artist, all right, and he comes back to me and says, Ron, maybe it's like what you're just saying. Maybe he comes back to me and says, well, you've got a little flow of action here. I could add another panel and it'll work a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
Fine. Yeah. That's wicked okay with me. Okay, totally.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Right. And the reverse the same way. If I've got, like 6 panels and he comes back to me and says, you don't really need that 6 panel. I can make this work in 5.
Mm-hmm.
Again, go. Okay. So in writing your script, you basically need to give your artist all the information he or she needs. But then from that point on, they're going to do their own visual editing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by all means, let them do it. Run with it and flow with it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's always like in service to the project or as the project as a whole, right? Is the everyone's goal as a team is to make a product that is the best for the reader. And you can also get some really weird conversations, like working on Dracula, where Rob and I had one where we both agreed that issue 1 has too many panels per page, but the story needed that many panels per page because of the way that everything that the story is told. Because Dracula is a slow burn story, especially at the beginning there, and we have to get through a lot of movement in a limited amount of pages. And so him and I were both just like, we're not getting a whole lot of breathing room here, and we both hate it, but it's what does make the book the best.
Yeah.
I mean, I think all of us have had that experience at one time or another of picking up a comic book and finding, that even though there weren't a lot of panels at the same time, and this I've seen, which is what, drives me up a tree, in professionals like, Marvel titles or even DC titles with known professional writers, where you get a comic and there's so much wordage. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. It's like 3 or 4 word balloons in every panel plus captions. All right. You got 5 or 6 panels, but again, it's like what I showed you with that early 1950s Western. Okay. It's so overweighted with with wordage and balloons. All right, that, like it or not, even though there were 6 panels, the artist is still having to shrink down what you're going to see.
Yeah.
With all that lettering there. All right, and I'll quite honest with you, my feelings as a diehard comic fan, as I've been since I was a little kid, is I want to pick that comic book up and read through it quickly. I want to enjoy the art, take it in, read the words, turn the page, do it again, turn the page, all right, and have that experience where you have that magic that comics do in a child's imagination or adult's imagination, where you're actually seeing the motion in your head. There's static pictures, but when done properly, it flows. Your mind sees it moving. There's a mental movie going on in your head with this comic book. And 5, 6, 7, depending on the page count, 22, 24 pages, 8 and 9 minutes later, you finish reading it. And you go, wow, that's great. But I remember picking up some of these comics, and I am not going to mention who the writers were. But, I mean, they were well known. They were respected creators in this business. I couldn't get through 3 or 4 pages. It was like bogged down. You turn the page and, holy smokes, this is like 3,000 words. I got to sit there and read this and read that and read this and read that. Turn the page and it's the same thing again. Read this, read that. I want to scream at them. Go write a freaking book, okay? But this isn't good comics.
Yeah.
I'm kind of hung up on you saying you read a comic book in 9 minutes. You read too fast. It takes me way longer than that. I don't know if that's just me or because now I feel a little inadequate. Thanks, Rob.
I've had a little more experience at doing it than you have. A little tiny more, okay? Oh yeah. Well, I'm a
And in regards to that Western page that you were talking about, I guess it's me thinking when I look at that page, I think about the dialogue that's through it, and the action. That dude jumped off the horse, lassoed a window, climbed up the window, all Batman 66 style, jumped through the window, all having a freak monologue throughout the whole thing. That dude's lung capacity is crazy.
That's true. Yeah.
Oh no.
I think it's like a writer when trying to work out panels, I think that has to be taken into consideration too. And I would imagine, like I haven't had a problem with it in regards to like obsolete or cat and mouse, like going over the panels and pages that we have. I think it's flow pretty well with not like a whole heap of dialogue and whatnot, not like as if it were a character from a particular book that has more dialogue than anything ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
But yeah, I get it.
it's also the thing you have to think about as the team making the book. Speaking of lung capacity for the character, like on the page, right, doing all this action while monologuing. But also think about it, like you're thinking about also like the heart rate and the lung capacity of the reader. There's the same reason why when you're doing pacing,
Right.
you can't do 4 issues of nothing but build, because you're gonna have heart palpitations by the end of issue 2. You need to do rising and falling action, and you kind of stair step it up to the climax and denouement. But when you're looking at a page, you kind of want to think of a page almost the same way as you would a scene, right? And that often for the reader, you're only seeing 2 pages back to back, so it makes sense to have a scene to be this 2 pages right next to each other. And you need to have a rise, a fall, and a change happen in that scene. And of course, you can do it longer, you can do it shorter, however you want to do it. But if you are doing 8 panels of nonstop cowboy parkour, you're creating a lot of rising action and not giving the reader a lot of time to breathe and absorb what just happened in the story.
Yeah. There has to be a rhythm to your storytelling, and that's a marriage between how the writer writes the scene and how the artist, portrays it through the panel layout and the number of panels within that scene. Because sometimes you want that really large establishing shot at the top of page 1, and then you build it down to your kind of 2-3 panel grid at the bottom, and then something else big happens on page 2 on that page turn. You get the reader moving, things slow down, pick up again, slow down, pick up again. This rise and fall. You want your comic book to be a roller coaster. Thrills and calms.
Yeah.
Always. The rhythm of the pacing is key to a good comic. And again, it's something, like you could try to teach people, but I think I found that the better comic book writers are those who grew up being comic book fans.
Yeah.
All right. Because again, I've seen creative people outside of the media, all right, writers who've never ever done comics, but are established professional novelists. And when they try to write comics for the first time in their 30s or 40s, all right, they have a really hard time doing it because they can't understand that rhythm, right? I mean, there's a great deal of difference between writing something that another storyteller is going to get his or her hands on, all right, and interpret in a visual way. Whereas when you're writing, you're it. Writing prose, you're God. You create the world. So you create the visuals, the sound effects, the pacing, the whatever, and the reader's going to go along with you. But when they try to turn that into, working on a comic, 9 out of 10 novelists who try their hands at doing comics ultimately end up being way too wordy and way too verbose because they don't understand the economy of what we're talking about, that visual pacing, right? Yeah. And the last thing you want is a comic book that's 80% talking heads.
Yeah.
Kiss of death right there. Kiss of death. Guarantee nobody's going to pick up the second issue. All right. Yeah. If all you have is just people, and it's like talking with somebody one day, because I literally came in on several comic series in my career that was the case. Novelists had been hired to write these science fiction comics, and after 1 or 2 issues, the editors and especially the artists were having a fit because all they were doing was drawing talking heads. And basically, I get called in on this, and I'm talking with the editor of one particular series, and later that night got a call from the artist on the project, and he was like, please give me some action, anything. All right. So I literally started I read the previous comics where I was going to pick up the storyline and just basically said, okay, well, I basically started the 3rd issue, which was going to be my first script in the series, by literally blowing up a planet. Boom, here you go. Planet blows up. All right, all the and then slowly as you're getting all the results of that, and that just filters its way out through subsequent plots. I work in part of what they'd already done in the first 2 issues, bring those characters back. But now they're in dire situations, and we've got all kinds of reasons and logic for more action. And boom, 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 boom. I get a second call from the artist. Thank you. I'm sure, Angelo, Jose, the last thing you guys ever want to do is sit there and just draw people talking.
Yeah, there's I said in the last stream, there's only so many ways I can make a coffee cup look interesting, however many down shots, up shots, and profile shots I can do.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the famous coffee cup. Oh yeah, I've done that myself. Trust me. Even if I'm doing 1 or 2 pages of talking heads, I'll literally put in, he's pouring himself a cup of coffee. Get the dialogue going, okay? And, he lit up a cigarette. Smoke blows out here. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Something happening, all right, that the artist can at least draw, except for just 2 people talking there,
Yes. Actually, I have an example that from Wolf Hunter 2, if I
The
can
coffee
find.
cup?
Not the coffee cup, but a way, but how you can order panels for essentially talking heads. If you can
I'm gonna have Roland just write in a coffee cup scene so that Angela has to draw it. It's just gonna be like inside the cup ring.
Yeah,
There you go.
I want it.
right through the mud's handle. There you go. Make that like the page 1 splash.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly. I wonder if I got. I wonder if I put it in a different folder. But anyway, there was. We're having this. The two characters in Wolf Hunter are having this discussion, right? And it's a spy story, so a lot of the book is people sitting across the table from each other saying, "I know you're lying," but without actually saying it, and just trying to work through each other's body language. And you can only do so much of that visually, but it's the trope of a spy story. So, the joy of Wolf Hunter is he spends so much time exploring the psychology of Willard in this moment, as the things he's going through and how he's experiencing the reality of this world, but also his keen eye for understanding people. So we have the classic like head here, whatever. But then we cut to someone fidgeting on a ring. We cut to someone looking out. Like we cut to a flashback happening through a window. We do another thing happening in the bottom panel, and then finally we get the squinted eyes at each other at the bottom. So you can still have if you are doing a panel-heavy page that is not showing a lot of people actively moving in a scene, you still want to have the camera moving, kind of like we talked about. Is it's a visual medium, so you can think about yourself as the director. You're moving the camera, and you're putting in post effects, or you're putting in, different cuts in the camera, or different zoom levels.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find that if I am going to be writing what I know is going to be a talking head scene, and I recently did this in the last script I did for Boston Bombers, where I had to have these two characters meet and basically had one show up, and the chauffeur, his chauffeur goes out, knocks on the door, gets the other character, brings him out, and puts him in the backseat in the caddy with the main character, and they drive off. And so now I have to get this dialogue across between these two characters in the back seat. And I wrote those 2 pages, and after I'd finished writing them, I kept thinking about it and went, this is nuts. Okay, I mean, this is basically 2 guys sitting in a car talking, and the best my artist is ever going to give us is maybe a shot from outside as the sedan goes down the street downtown New York or whatever, right? And then I'm like within 24 hours, I come back to it the next day, and I went, what the heck? What am I doing? Basically, I stick him in the car, and I just totally rewrote the scene and literally had them go to Central Park and get out of the car and walk through Central Park. Walking through Central Park, I use the same exact dialogue, but now my artists have all different kinds of things to draw all around them while they're walking. Some kid throwing a frisbee, playing with his dog, going by the pond. All right, same dialogue, same things I wanted to get across, but now a whole lot more visual. And the artist turned around and said, "Hey, thanks for that. I'm glad we weren't stuck in the back seat of that sedan."
Oh, yeah.
Here's part of that scene, but as we also talked about, is one of the keys of pacing is, as according to Ben Piercy, the writer of Green Arrow and several other best-selling books, always explode the helicopter, right? So exploding plane is kind of there. But if you are writing something, the idea is that you are building to a moment where the helicopter explodes and you have this great change, this great moment of impact or excitement for the reader. If you're doing, if this page was as dense as this page was, then that plane exploding would have hit and be over with.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas here, where we're doing the montage through the train, we kind of want that to hit fast and move out, but we want this big moment. And same deal, why you want to have a splash page or an empty page is you have it where the helicopter explodes, or this big change in visual impact where the reader sits and absorbs what just happened because things have changed. If we can think about it like a movie, if we were to take the scene from The Matrix where Neo does the bullet time dodge and convert it to a comic, like that's probably going to be a 3, maybe 4 panel page. If that was 6 or 7 panels, you would have a moment where Neo like bends over, dodges the first bullet, Zap gets hit, goes down, and we're just sitting there wondering, what just happened? What is the point of that? What just happened?
Yeah.
I can see that being 4 panels.
Yeah. Jose just did the illustration in his mind.
I kind of did. Because you have to, like, you know, from an artist's point of view, you have to, you know, yeah, if you see that on a script, you know, agent whatever points a gun, you know what I mean, and Neo turns to see him pointing the gun, then that's, you see bullets flying, you know, and you know, a panel is like sudden, like suspense and whatnot, and then the back end. You know, the back bend is the payoff panel. That's the, you know, like we were talking about, you know what I mean, that's the going to be the bigger panel. That's the one you want, like, the action and the detail in, you know, bullets whizzing by. It's like,
Yeah.
so yeah, totally narrated that in my head.
So I guess I'll pass this on then to the artists. And when you see a script or a panel layout, at what point does your mind say, like, no, this doesn't work? Is it kind of immediately upon reading it and seeing the amount of panels, or is it, do you get like through your thumbnails and then start doing the edits back at that point?
For me, it's usually at the thumbnail sketches. Yeah, it's usually by the time I start working it out, I go, no, I don't think that punch would really connect. Let me pull it back, and maybe we can remove this panel and just make it flow a little quicker. You know, maybe there's too much dead time here. Like how Ron was saying before about letting the artist just kind of like, you know, edit the layout if it seems like it might work one way or the other. So yeah, that's usually where I kind of have to fiddle with it, you know.
Yeah, and like I said, I can, you know, figure out a panel in my head, but it might not, in my head, might not look nearly as, you know, as good as if I lay it down on paper. Like, even, like I said, even just a thumbnail, and you know what, that's not going to work for me. I like this panel, let me redo this panel over here. Let me redo this panel over here. You know what I mean? Then I'll kind of piece it together on another section of the paper. But like I mean, I do thumbnails on 11 by 17 like printer paper, so I have plenty of room to make, you know what I mean, make options and choices. So
Yeah,
Absolutely. I guess, and then also I have another art related question going into David, because as we talked about in episodes before, a lot of coloring now, especially, it happens in the render, and it's not just the flats, but it's the how do you handle your transitions and your gradients and all that stuff. But if you have too many panels, you can actively harm that because you literally just do not have the space to do a proper gradient. You know, at least if we're going, in my mind, going from canvas down to panel, you know, digitally is different because you can enhance and zoom. But when you're coloring a page, how does the panel count, or like how do you take that into consideration, or how does that affect your ability to work?
Well, a lot of it's trying to read what the key panels are and what's trying to be done in the other ones. Because if you give equal weight to every single panel, then you just have a solid page of just color.
Yeah.
It's just, there you go. So if you were taking something that had a lot of panels, then your smaller panels for me would be something that's more flat, more not super saturated. A lot of it would be desaturated, possibly darkened, to try and push the colors and the items on the key panels that you want to do. Kind of what Ron was talking about with the old, you know, the Frank Miller Dark Knight Returns, all those multi-panels. Yeah, you would pretty much have to just almost just flat the entire, all of those screens and everything, just to kind of keep them from overwhelming with desaturated colors. And then when you're dealing with an impact, impact panel, then those you would want to render with more detail, with more saturated colors, possibly more contrast, just to kind of bring those forward and push the other ones back. So a lot of times what you may end up doing is going through and rendering everything and then having to back out and look at the panels and, take a wider view and push things back and pull things forward depending on how they are. I mean, with your Wolf Hunter page, exactly. If everything had a weight, similar weight and everything, your plane would not, pop like it needs to. So, things like that. Your Soul Ascendant page that you had up there, that would be an interesting one, because looking at the three panels are very similar in how you would want to make those pops. So that would take some playing around with what do you want to focus on the page to do? Do you want that middle page to establish, that middle panel to establish,
the 3-page panel.
Yeah, the 3-page panel. Are you building it around the center sun? Are you pushing it? Maybe your direction would be, you're going from top down from something, way less saturated, darker, and all that, and you're pushing the panels in brighter as you go through, more detailed, so that the bottom panel has, a lot of flame, a lot of character. You got to also kind of balance out, because that's also a tough page to do, because there's a lot of fire on that, and flame in itself
a lot of render.
It's a lot of render, but it's also a lot of saturation, because flames have a pretty wide range from oranges to yellows. You could even, if you wanted to go more into some like blue flame stuff like that, for the darker areas, you can do that. But it's all on how you can render that page and come up with 3 scenarios. You can render it so that the first panel is the predominant one, or the second one, or the third one, and they can be completely rendered differently depending on how you want to do it. That quick look that I had, if I was doing that particular page, I would probably do the top down, working my way down to that bottom panel, and put more color, more emphasis on the bottom panel, because you have the flame, you have character, you have everything there. So it's kind of just color wise telling that story of getting to that bottom panel. So.
And I just want to say thank you for the question in chat, Nick of Time. Since it's not quite on topic, we'll get to that at the end of the show when we pop into our general Q&A section. But yeah, it's.
I think the thing I love about comics, I really do, okay, is this merging of the two sensibilities, right? Literature and art coming together. And this topic to me is fascinating, because in those couple of years where I taught that class on how to write comics, right, that local community college, during those 3 years I did that, I had several professional graphic illustrators take my class. Okay. So there were assignments where I would send them home for the weekend and say, okay, so, and this is after I had talked about panels and room for art and whatever, okay, where I had, like I said, one particular person in the class, or 2 maybe, that had done comics and other stuff in the past, but wanted to bone up on storytelling and learning, more about scripting. Whereas the rest of the class were all basically comic fans or enthusiasts who never done any of this at all, writing or drawing. And so early on in the course, I talked about, again, space for the art and limiting panel arrangements as much as possible between 5 and 6 and finding that rhythm. Okay. So after doing this for a couple classes, I send them home with writing assignments, right? And basically say, okay, I want you to go home and write me a 5-page, story. Here's the theme, horror, western, or whatever. All right. They'd write a script and digitally, email them to me. I would read them, go over them, critique them, and then we talk about it the next class and back at school. And what I found really interesting was the 1 or 2 professional graphic artists that I had taking my class found the page restrictions that would chafe them. That the regular students who were just learning this for the first time as far as scripting and had no drawing experience at all, no ever, doing graphics or anything, would basically find a way to adhere to doing the 5 pages in that 5 or 6 panel rhythm. But the artists in the group were turning scripts that had like 8 panels, 9 panels. It was like, I got to get too much more in this. I need more in this. This isn't enough. 5 pages isn't enough for this. 5 pages. And it got me to thinking about that to the point where, this is definitely for you artists, right? Do you intrinsically have a sense of wanting to tell something faster than what you see on a written page on a script?
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I find it so this is actually kind of funny because earlier today when I was at work, I was reading a collection of like Darwin Cook's Batman short stories. And one of them inside was the Tim Sale and Darwin Cook Batman and Catwoman story. And in Darwin Cook's foreword for that story, he said that Tim Sale approached him and kept asking to try to extend the amount of pages they could work with because he kept finding that, this could be a really interesting scene if I do this big double page splash with these 2 side panels and then go to the next page. So that's a really funny timing of you asking that question. Because, I find that all the time in my work where I'm like, I feel like I could tell more of a story here that like there could be a little bit more to really make the scene roll in a more satisfying way to me as just a visual artist. I find wanting to add or take away panels is always a need.
Yeah. What about you, Jose? Have that same feeling of I want more?
Sometimes, like I said, I've done a panel, or not panel, sorry, I did a page for Obsoletes where the writer called for like 6 to 7 panels, for this to narrate a particular fight scene. And I like the idea of being more efficient with the space that I have. So instead of doing said 7 or so panels, I did 2 panels, and then I did 1 big panel and just showed movement where he fought across that panel. You know what I mean? Like bounce from one enemy to another. You know what I mean? I just thought that created more movement. Like I'm old like you, Ron. I mean that in the most loving way. That I'm used to, the 5 to 6 panels. I mean, I grew up where the panels were fairly easy 6 panel. You know what I mean? All panels were the same basically, and to watch, you know what I mean, in through like, the end of the 80s and then into the 90s, and watching panel borders kind of get obliterated and go from like very, very structured to slightly breaking the panel. So my arm would go into Tim's face, you know what I mean? And to just completely getting rid of like the panel entirely and just showing, the art on there.
Well, I've seen
it pull back. I've seen it.
I think
come back with it.
The difference between the sensibilities, again, between the writer and the artist, I think, and making that work, okay, both coming together, all right, and finding a way to respect that other form of storytelling and appreciating each for what they are, and then that symbiotic relationship, which creates something totally different, totally new, totally unique, right? we had talked, a while. The last, funding project I was involved with was the Western, right? We're putting issue number 1 together, Hamlet's Inn. And when I wrote that first issue, I had it in my mind to do 22 pages. When I got to the, page 21, 22, it fit, it worked. I laid it out the way I wanted to. I told the story I wanted to do. Okay. So I turn around and I give it to Zane DeGain, right? Who, like you guys, is a, Cooper graduate himself.
Yep.
And Zane gets it, takes it home, and he's working on it. And I'm seeing preliminary roughs and, thumbnails and finally finished pages. I am just going nuts because the work is absolutely beautiful, right? So halfway through the book, we get together for coffee one day, and he says to me, he goes, I got a favor to ask. I says, shoot, what? He goes, can I add 2 pages? And I went, excuse me? He goes, the end. He says, I can stretch those 2 pages. I can give you 24 pages. He says, because the panels are okay. But let me go from like 5 panels to a 3-page panel, like what you talked about, Tim, what you liked. He says, because this is dramatic. And we're getting to the end. And let's have a real nice little cliffhanger surprise, almost big splash panel, page 24.
Yeah.
Man, I was like, whoa, okay, that's how invested he got with the story, with the characters. I said, go for it. And he has. And now it's a 24-page comic. And it looks, and hey, I could just like, all right, that's what I intended all along. No way. That's Zane. That's total Zane. All right. So again, it's like, that's why I love writing comics. Okay. I love working with other creators, and we bounce ideas off each other all the time. And, Tim said it, right at the side of this, if it works, your one goal is to make the best comic book you can make.
Right.
All right. That's going to entertain people, both in story and artwork and colors and everything. All right. And lettering, good lettering, solid lettering, all that. That's a good comic book when everybody's focused on that one single target. All right. Let's make the best comic book we can make.
Absolutely. And we do have some questions in chat to round up tonight's show. We'll start with the most on topic and then end with the one that is kind of off topic. Vava Boom asks, curious about the panel's thoughts. What are your feelings about big fight scenes? I feel there's not really good reason to have lots of exposition when characters in the midst of fighting, which means fewer speech balloons, but with fewer panels, the page looks empty. I'd say my first comment on that is that a good artist can make like textless panels look full because they're going to find ways to add in great detail or a great anatomy or have full range of movement throughout the panel. So your artist is absolutely going to use up the real estate you give them. But my thought is that I kind of agree with you is that I think that a lot of exposition in a fight is either has to be character specific, like Spider-Man or Tony Stark. They're going to be expositing during a fight scene. That's just who they are. That's kind of what they do. But it is almost like a thing of different sensibilities for different periods. Whereas if you want to look at another parallel, like with, the 90s, you had Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, and you have people talking to each other for full 30-minute episodes in between throwing punches.
4 episode punches.
Yes.
4 episode punches.
Yes.
Yeah.
But now we can compare that to, and it's going to be the thing of like, it's Vegeta fighting Goku and Vegeta saying like, I thought you were just a lost son, but now I respect you as a fighter because you're beating me, blah, 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 blah. Get that to a modern show or modern thing, and we can have one moment in Jujutsu Kaisen where Totoro throws a punch, and then a demon looks up at him and says, "Oh," smiles, and they go back to fighting. And you get that same, that same realization, that same character-to-character moment, but done in a couple of seconds.
Yeah.
So it's how well you can visually and concisely tell that change or that character interaction.
Yeah. And in terms of the fight scene thing, I think a great example of an artist I really enjoy that handles a lot of cool fight scenes is David Aja in The Immortal Iron Fist. Like that does a lot of really cool double page spreads where it's maybe 4 panels up here, big image that feels super full, and then maybe another 2 or 3 panels at the bottom to really kind of like have a good page hourglass balance,
Yeah.
And it makes this really satisfying feel. And having guys flying over this way and weapons flying off here to make really interesting silhouettes will help just really bring a lot of punch to your fight scene. So I think, yeah, the fewer the panels, it could still feel really exciting the more you kind of fill it out and make it feel lived in.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I saw a Wildcats book where it was a double page spread, and it was literally them Wildcats and another group just fighting it out. Like you saw, the characters weren't very big in it, right? But so they showed just the enormity of the entire landscape they were fighting in, and then it had panels on the sides of it and like down the front or down the bottom, and those panels were zoom-ins of each character's fighting section, right? Which I thought was pretty cool. I never had a reason to kind of incorporate something like that, but that's another way to incorporate panels. And if you feel you have to have panels to help direct that particular fight scene double page spread, you can do that, and then that gives you a balance for actually it's an off balance, but it's meant to be off balance. It's meant to kind of make it a little weighty on one side or the other, and that helps to direct the eye as well. But you can use that when throwing in your narrative, throwing in your dialogue and stuff like that, without covering just the immenseness of what you're trying to portray as an artist for your page or splash page or double page spread.
Yeah. Say, a lot of I believe it was Matt Faction's Hawkeye also had a lot of low text or low dialogue fight scenes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But still made full use of the page, just the way they orchestrated the full scene. So having Hawkeye move through different panels. It's
another thing that's going to help you with a fight scene. All right, and then just throwing this out there. I mean, if you're going to write a fight scene that goes over a couple pages, all right, hopefully you know a little bit about fighting yourself, whether the writer or the artist. I mean, one of my favorite comics over the years for those kind of fight scenes that were authentic was Mike Barron's Badger.
Yeah.
All right, and Mike's a black belt. So Mike not only knew what he was writing about, all right, but there was more than enough little thumbnail stick figure sketches that he would put in the scripts for his artists, who, if they didn't have any martial arts training, at least he would give them some guidance to make the fight look real. These people knew what the heck they were doing.
Yeah, I mean, that was something that we had a panel a couple years ago that maybe we'll revisit the topic, but I was on a panel with Dean Zachary and Curtis, and Dean Zachary is a Shotokan karate tournament fighter. Curtis teaches Kung Fu, and I've been a boxer for so many years now. So you thinking about your own body mechanics when you're orchestrating these fight scenes does a ton.
Yep. Authentic.
Yeah.
All right. And then another question to end up the show. What is your best, this one's the off-topic one, but still a good question. What is your best advice for character development for comics, like fleshing out characters' personalities, motives with little dialogue?
Ooh, writers.
Yeah. Oh, that's easy. That's so wicked easy. All right. Really, everybody you've ever met in this world has likes and dislikes. Small, little, ridiculous little things, little habits, cracking their knuckles all the time. Have your character doing that. Okay. Boom. It tells you a little bit about them. They're nervous. They're anxious. Whatever. Right. With very little dialogue. All right. Or again, they have a favorite slang saying they use all the time. Repeat it. Get it repetitious. All right. Again, it's like you should know your characters inside out. All right. In your mind, as a writer, you know them from the time they were born to grade school, kindergarten on up. You know what fights they had in the schoolyard. You know their backgrounds. You know what kind of drink they like to have, et cetera, et cetera. And then as you're writing the script, you just pepper it. You just pepper it with certain lines of dialogue or this or that, or have two characters talking about a movie they saw and which movie they liked, which movie they didn't like, and those kind of things. But again, how do they dress? What kind of clothes do they have? It's the favorite phrase, The devil is in the details. Okay. You want your characters to be alive, then make them alive in your head. Okay. Know them inside out, and then throw in all those little idiosyncrasies that make them real people.
Yeah. I'd say if I give a reference for this specifically for knowing your character's backbone and how it can interact with the story in as little dialogue as possible. I'm going to spoil a 20-year-old comic at this point because it's on top of my mind, but in Original Sin, it starts off, you have Wolverine, Bucky, Captain America, and Nick Fury at a diner doing eating steak, and what they've coined as meat night, and all Wolverine says is meat, or just says meat night, something like that. I think Wolverine has a total of like 5 lines of dialogue in this entire series. But then you get to and that's what makes it so impactful. But then you cut to when it gets revealed that Nick Fury is the bad guy, that he has had the secret this entire time. Mm-hmm. And Wolverine just shouts, "You ruined a beat night." So this moment where you had this one moment where Wolverine, has stated this is something important to him. You don't get a whole lot of dialogue from him because everything else isn't really phasing him, because again, he's the soldier that's seen 100 wars. Mm-hmm. And then you get to the moment where Wolverine realizes the betrayal and just screams about meat night, which is a callback to the start of the comic, right? So it's 2 lines of dialogue that sell like how much this betrayal has impacted Wolverine.
Yeah.
There's so many things you can do. So many things to add character. Yeah. I mean, one of your basic characters, two of your characters walking down the sidewalk talking, and a good-looking girl walks the other way, and one of the characters looks over his shoulder. Doesn't have to say anything.
Yeah.
Okay. You go, okay. We know a little bit about him.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's deceptively simple. How it's just, treat your characters like people, the little odd things, and even within the artwork, on the art side of things, whatever the artist can do to just kind of make them feel alive. If they are a character that, smokes cigarettes or something, or if it's a character that's like pouring a cup of coffee, somebody that's doing something, somebody that has a habit, it just helps sell the fact that this is a real world that characters live in and have like feeling and expression through. It's the deceptively human bits.
Yeah. And I mean, really, look, writers do this anyways. It's an automatic, like reaction of studying the world around you. And I'd like to think that maybe, 100% of the characters that I've created in fiction in my scripts are in one form or another based on people I've known, habits I've seen, friends I had, whatever, family, friends, et cetera, and just incorporate those things in the characters I write, because I know that, this is what real people do. This is how real people talk, how they act, those kind of things.
Yeah.
And unlike, what TikTok wants you to believe, you can't just run up to people and take pictures. You send your kids. Mm-hmm. Just saying. I mean, listen, you were talking about people watching. I've sat there just watch people. I sat there when I was, when I was at school. We were taking the train to New York to go for New York Comic Con. You get bored. You sit there and just sketch out people. You know what I mean? Just I know it sounds to some people, I think it sounds cliche. Oh yeah, he's just sitting there drawing people. Man, we really kind of do it all the time. Yeah. It's not like it's, you know what I mean? It's not. That is our tick. As an artist, that's our tick. To sit there and we have to like pencil in hand all the time, right? My son constantly taps on stuff. Like he's like, right, all the time. He's been doing it since he was like 5 months old. But he's also now a drummer who plays 7 different instruments. You know what I mean? Yeah. That music is always in his head. That's his tick. He can't not drum through like rudiments and all kinds of stuff on his hand. You know what I mean? So like incorporating stuff like that into your characters, you'll never notice. I saw an article or a little news thing on Facebook that Pedro Pascal has anxiety issues. You know what I mean? When he's standing in front of people. And I guess evidently some of his castmates and whatnot know that, but he gives them a sign, like they kind of hold his hand and whatnot. But you would never know that if some men didn't point it out, right? But now, like
Yeah.
me personally, now I'm always looking. Hey, if I see him in an interview or something like that, am I going to see a tick on his face? Am I going to see, a fidget that I didn't recognize? Because I want to see that flaw. Those flaws that we create and put into characters is what develops them and makes them more personable, makes them more relatable to people that read our comics, that read the things that we do. It's not just Johnny Bravo running around, being super cool and whatnot. It's
Yeah.
the fact that he's the only one who thinks he's cool. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, and that's if you get like it all comes down to research. Whether it's research, watching people, and I think about people. I'm a fan of this writing experiment, which we've made students do. And I don't know if Ron, you made your students do this, but the idea of go out to a cafe when you see someone come in the door, start writing down where did they come from, what's on their mind, who are they here to do, where are they going after this.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Oh, I mean, I'm going to be traveling this weekend. I'm heading out to Chicago for the Windy City Paper and Pulp Convention. And one of the things I love is airports.
Yeah.
Because you're sitting there waiting for your plane, and you're looking around, everybody's sitting there waiting. And as a writer, it's just like, you just have a ball. Just figuring out their backstories, what do they do for a living? Where are they going? Who are they going to meet? All right. It's like, any international spies here or whatever. All right. It's like all kinds of things. All right. Somebody going to a family reunion, relative they haven't seen in 10 years. How important is that? Because your imagination takes over. All right. And you just fill it in. Like artists are always looking at the visuals. All right. And writers are always making up stories. That's what we do.
Yeah. And, get to know the people in your life and ask them questions about their experience and other things. And
always,
if you want to research stuff, Google's always great and look up stuff on the Sleep Encyclopedia. But for instance, for Wolf Hunter, to kind of get to one of the main points of character development is Willard getting over certain elements of his PTSD. Some of it lingers because it always will, but there are elements of it that you can learn to cope with. And so I had a buddy who was a Marine Raider and dealt with severe PTSD. And something he always talked about was the tremors he would have. Yeah. And it'd just be something that happened. But if he's in a moment of high intensity, they go away because he goes into training mode and he's just thinking about what's been drilled in his mind. Mm-hmm. But it's always that fear of what if they come back? What if the tremors come back when I'm in this mode? And so Willard will have these moments where he notices a tremor and and then he's hanging off the side of a train and his hand is solid in this moment, but he's afraid his hand is going to give out because he's lost that part of self-confidence in himself. But it's just this mental back and forth, and so you can do it in one line of dialogue of him talking to his hand, but just showing this character struggle, this character development's happening with mostly visuals.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this has been That's My Show on Tuesday. We have been your crew for tonight. We will be back next week, and my calendar is over here, and I definitely have it open to what our scheduled program is. Make sure to check out Wednesday Wham and Silver Sunday. I believe the Wednesday Wham time has changed, and I forgot to memorize it.
9
Eastern, and then
6
Sunday
Pacific,
and 6 Pacific. Yeah, and Silver Sunday is still at 8 Eastern, I believe. We'll be back talking next week about more cat and mouse related shenanigans. Talking about how to write
cat and mouse shenanigans.
We're talking about how to write a modern crime thriller.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, we're going to be talking about how you can have cell phones in your story and not have it ruin everything, because cell phones can ruin everything about a crime thriller. So,
yeah.
So that'll be your topic then. We'll see you next week. But until that time,
Make
mine Silverline.
Hi, I'm Greg Horn. Make mine Silverline.